How's it going, guys? It's Kass. As always, if you've been enjoying my content, then hit that subscribe button. So today's video is going to be basically a beginner guide and a returning player guide for Demon Hunter and patch 9.1. Now I want to preface this video by saying that this is just going to go through some of the systems and some of the decisions that we have to make in Shadowlands, just to make those decisions easier for you. And then on top of that, I'm going to recommend a set of talents that I personally feel is something that you can play in any aspect of the game and be relatively successful with. Now, what this video isn't is this video isn't a guide to be like a top parser or anything like that. This is more just trying to get people to a place where they're in the game, have a pretty good start, and then they can move towards perfecting their current character situation past them. All right, so let's go ahead and start with talents. These talents I like to recommend just because it's relatively easy to play, and honestly, it's something that you can use in every aspect of the game. Blinding Fury makes it so whenever you press I-beam, you generate a full bar of Fury. So basically what this does is every time that you I-beam, you're going to get that full bar of Fury. You're going to get Metamorphosis because we're playing Demonic as well. And then also you want to obviously be finishing your channels on every I-beam so you get access to Furious Gaze, which just gives you a little bit of haste once the channel finishes. This talent basically allows you to have access to a full bar of Fury so you can spend it all on Chaos Strikes, while you also have access to Metamorphosis, and on top of that, the extra haste, which basically just gives you a big damage window where you can put out a lot of Chaos Strikes. Moving on from there is Insatiable Hunger. Now, this is something that you could probably choose between Burning Hatred and Insatiable Hunger here. However, I just like Insatiable Hunger because in a lot of situations, what this will do is it'll allow you to use your full bar of Fury and then only press one Demon's Bite to get an extra Chaos Strike after that whenever you press I-beams. Also, this makes it so you have to just press less Demon's Bites in general because it gives you extra Fury generation from your generator. Next, we're going to talk about this row here. Realistically, you can choose between Unbound Chaos or Glaive Tempest. Both of these are perfectly fine choices. And if you're looking to play a more engaging style, I would suggest playing Unbound Chaos. However, if you want something that's a little bit easier and doesn't force you to use your movement abilities to do damage, you can play Glaive Tempest as well. In the 35 row, I think it's probably best to play Soul Rending if you're a newer player to the class, just because it's a nice baseline leech, a little bit extra survivability for you. Now, if there are some mechanics that you're looking to immune in specific fights, then Netherwog is a great choice as well. Next row here, I just prefer Cycle of Hatred, mostly because we've played a full expansion of First Blood style builds, so it's kind of gotten old to me. Also, Cycle of Hatred works very well whenever playing with Blinding Fury also, because it just gets you to more windows haste and more windows of more Fury generation, because Cycle of Hatred reduces the cooldown of I-beam every time your Chaos Strike refunds, which is 40% of the time when you press Chaos Strike. Also, there is a discussion where Essence Break is pretty good right now. However, that's probably only going to be with momentum, so that's kind of out of the scope of this video. Next is the 45 row. This is basically just a pick whichever one you want. Spell Eruption's nice if you need an extra stun. Unleash Power is nice if you're fighting a lot of AoE packs and you don't want to have a Fury cost on your Chaos Nova. And Master the Glaive is very good too, especially in PvP with the snare that you get. Lastly is this final row here. This is basically just going to be Demonic for the most part. Demonic is just a very, very good talent and just gives you access to a lot of damage and a lot of survivability as well. Momentum is something that could be played also. It's very good and honestly very fun to play. It has a much higher skill stealing, so that's kind of outside the scope of this video. Lastly, Fell Barrage is just a meme ability, and honestly, it's not good. So I would suggest just forgetting this exists. That's basically the talents that you're going to look for. These will work in Mythic Plus in any dungeon that you're doing. These will work perfectly fine in PvP as well. And then on top of that, in Raid, even in single target environments, this build setup is perfectly fine to be successful. Moving on from there, we're going to talk about Covenant choice. Realistically, I think if you're a new player, you should probably just play Night Fae. Mostly because Night Fae is probably just going to be the best Covenant again, And on top of that, the things that Night Fae give you doesn't really affect how much you play the class that much. You get access to an ability called the Hunt, which is a bunch of damage, burst damage that you can do with it as well. And it gives you a really nice AoE dot also. And then on top of that, you get access to Grove Invigoration whenever you choose Naya. And this will basically allow you to get a lot of extra mastery that will help you out. Moving on to our conduit choices. For potency conduits, it's basically going to be Growing Inferno or Relentless Onslaught, or both, depending on how many you have access to. And then in Mythic Plus environments, Unnatural Malice conduit's going to be good. It also could be fine in PvP too, potentially, but I would probably stick more to these two conduits in any other environment aside from those two. When it comes to endurance conduits, it's really just going to be Shattered Restoration and Vicious Ink. There is some potential where Roaring Fire could be good if you're playing Collective Anguish, which we'll talk about later. However, I think just the reduced magic damage taken and on top of that the extra healing from Shattered Souls is probably just a better option. Next thing that we're going to talk about is finesse conduits, and these really are pretty meaningless. The only one that really is decent in some situations is Ravenous Consumption, because it gives you a chance to dispel 2 targets. So if you're playing versus mages, you can dispel 2 of their barriers instead of 1, or potentially get lucky and get their combust or something like that. That's why this finesse conduit is good. The rest of these are probably just the ones that you can just slot in whenever. You get a little bit of extra movement speed, or you get a little bit of reduced movement speed on enemies that were affected with Imprison. Realistically, this choice is pretty meaningless in the overall grand scheme of things. Finally, we're going to talk about legendaries, and this is basically choose one of these 3 and you'll be perfectly fine. As long as you choose either Burning Wound, Collective Anguish, or Dark Glare Medallion, you'll be more than successful in 99% of the environment. There are some different playstyles that you will have to think about whenever playing these legendaries. With Burning Wound specifically in AoE, you have to basically dot multiple targets in order to get the maximum effect out of this legendary. However, in single target, basically the playstyle is the exact same. And then the rest of these legendaries do provide some other benefits aside from just being good options. Collective Anguish gives you a nice heal from the Fell Devastation that it spawns. Also, if you get interrupted on your I-beam, the Fell Devastation still goes through fully, so it's still a nice heal that you're getting from it, and on top of that, it's some supplemental damage, even though you got interrupted on your I-beam. Dark Glare Medallion is kind of a RNG spec, but whenever it hits, it feels very good. And that's basically all that you need to know right now to go from a fresh level 60 to have a pretty good understanding of how to play the class and to be pretty successful overall. If you liked the video, leave a like. If you didn't like the video, F5 refresh, try it again. Maybe you'll like it the second time. Have a good one.